Okay, so I'd like to welcome you all to our web seminar on depression. We've made just a slight change to our program. I was going to start with a short talk to introduce Patrick in, but I'd just like to thank Patrick for giving us his time because I know he's a very busy man. And we're really glad to have him join us. Just checking, how many books have you written, Patrick?
Well, I think it's 37 now, although
okay.
I promised to quit.
And there's this particular book which I think you'll all be interested in with regards to depression. Feel Good? Is that what it's called, Patrick?
The Feel Good Factor.
The Feel Good Factor. I'm just going to let Patrick carry on now, so don't waste any more of your time. So, Patrick, you can take the chair.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Holford, and I started out actually as a psychologist. And I believed, and I do believe, that so much of our how we feel is to do with the state of our mind. I mean, literally, how we process the stuff that has happened in our lives. So I like you, intended to be a psychotherapist. And what happened for me, this is back in the 1970s, so I'm in my mid-50s, is that I came across this amazing research on nutrition and the brain. And it really made it very clear to me that how we think and how we feel has an awful lot to do also the chemistry of our mind, of our brains. And I'll give you a very simple example of this. Every single substance in your body and brain is made directly from what you eat. And if you're interested in your mood and your depression, you will have heard of serotonin. And serotonin is what's called a neurotransmitter. And it sends messages from one brain cell to the next. And all of the drugs that are used as antidepressants really are designed to affect serotonin, or to increase serotonin. But serotonin itself is made from protein. Protein is made from amino acids. And there's one amino acid called tryptophan, happens to be very rich in turkey, and bananas, and various other foods. So in one study at Oxford University, they took 15 people who were not depressed and gave them a diet which they didn't know had every nutrient necessary except tryptophan. And within 8 hours, 10 out of 15 were feeling depressed. In other words, everything in your brain is made directly from what you eat. And what you eat has a direct effect upon how you feel and how you think. You know, literally, sometimes in a matter of minutes or hours. And what I started to do a long time ago was to look at all of the factors that affect a person's mood and all of the available research of what actually works. And more than a decade ago, we set up a clinic called the Brain Bio Centre. It's just outside London. And it's part of the charity that I run, which is called Food for the Brain. You can find out a lot on foodforthebrain.org. And if you come to our clinic, the Brain Bio Centre, and you are depressed, we're going to take a urine sample and we're going to take a blood sample, and we're going to find out whether you've got any imbalances that could lead to depression. Now, I don't want you to think that I think that the only cause of depression is nutritional deficiencies, brain chemistry. Of course, you know, if you have a bereavement or you're very stressed, you're doing a job that you really don't like, or your relationship is not really working, I mean, all of these are going to bring on food. But so too will, for example, a lack of omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats, which are found in oily fish and nuts and seeds, are absolutely essential for how serotonin works. And you can actually predict a country's rate of depression simply by knowing its intake of seafood. So if you don't eat nuts or seeds, and by the way, I'm talking here ideally about raw nuts and seeds, not cooked, fried, crispy things, and you don't eat fish, where are you getting your omega-3s? And to put this in context, there have been 10 what we call randomized controlled trials, placebo versus, in this case, omega-3 supplements. And most of them show that omega-3 is very, very effective. Now, another nutrient is vitamin D. And when I look at my host for today, I notice that his skin is a lot darker than mine. Now, that's great news if you live in Africa because it stops you being fried by the sun. But it's actually very bad news if you live in England, where the weather, actually today is quite nice, but usually it's awful. And between October and March, we just do not get enough intensive sunlight. And sunlight makes vitamin D in the skin, and vitamin D improves your mood. So there are a lot of studies now that show that low vitamin D equals low mood, and if you increase intake of vitamin D, you get a better mood. And by the way, the foods that are rich in vitamin D are, again, seafood, oily fish. But in truth, in the winter months, if you live in the northern hemisphere, you cannot get enough vitamin D from food. You really have to supplement it. We are designed to be naked, living outdoors, and a lot further south than London. So, omega-3s, vitamin D, tryptophan, these are 3 nutrients that absolutely work. Another fundamental, which is really big now, is to do with blood sugar. It used to be so that the typical candidate for depression would be an older woman who would be a very light sleeper, eating like a sparrow, hence losing weight or skinny, and with a very flat, low, pessimistic mood. But in recent years, there's a syndrome which is technically called atypical depression, though it's becoming more typical, which describes usually a younger woman who could sleep forever, feels sleepy and groggy during the day, craves carbohydrate, gaining weight, loves sugar, and doesn't have a flat, low, pessimistic mood, actually has mood dips, and is very sensitive. So in other words, if someone criticizes them, they can really go into a pit of depression. This is called atypical depression. And Adewale, you'll like this story because a guy I met who's a professor of psychoanalysis at university in North Carolina.
Okay.
He had been working with this patient for many years, many years of psychoanalysis. And in honesty, he would say he was still depressed, but had more insight. And one day the patient turns up and says, "Doc, I'm better.
Oh.
I've been taking these pills from the health food shop, and I'm better." And the professor, of course, was skeptical, and he looked at the pills, and they contained 5 active ingredients. So what he did was he gave his patient separately each of these ingredients in an envelope unmarked.
Oh.
And when he didn't have the pills, he got depressed, and they found out that it was chromium, which is an essential mineral, that was stopping him being depressed. When he had the chromium, he wasn't depressed. When he didn't have the chromium, he was depressed. So, being a man of science, he set up a double-blind placebo-controlled trial and took a group of atypical depression patients, put half of them on chromium supplements, this is an essential mineral, and half on placebo. And at the end of the 12 weeks, 60% who were depressed on chromium were no longer depressed. And on the placebo group, it made no difference. So we don't exactly know how chromium works, but we know that it makes insulin work, and we know that when you have blood sugar problems,
Okay.
you stop being able to use insulin properly. So there's a big link between diabetes, for example, and depression. So the interesting point here is that you could work with somebody with very good techniques like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc., but not realize that this person may actually have a blood sugar problem or a lack of omega-3 or a lack of vitamin D. And what we find, because we actually work a lot with psychotherapists, is that all psychotherapeutic approaches work better when someone's brain is optimally nourished.
Hmm.
Now, I'll give you another example, because we are all different, but this is a bit more than depression. This was a lady who's actually, I met when she was 23, she's called Liz. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 15 and was on very heavy tranquilizer drugs And we can say that these drugs are like a chemical straitjacket. They stop someone harming themselves, they may stop them harming someone else, but they're not a cure. And what we found in this girl is that it turned out that she was allergic to wheat.
Oh.
And when we eliminated wheat, all her symptoms of schizophrenia went away. And by the way, extreme wheat allergy is called celiac disease. And a very common first presenting symptom of celiac disease is depression. Now, some people with wheat allergy or celiac disease also have digestive problems. But so far, we've learned that you can be deficient in tryptophan, you can be deficient in omega-3, you can be deficient in vitamin D, you can have blood sugar problems, in which case eating less sugar and having more chromium can help. You can be allergic to a food that you are eating. And then I'll tell you a fascinating story by one of my great teachers and mentors, a man called Dr. Abraham Hoffer. And he was an amazing psychiatrist. You should look him up on the web. He's very interesting. And Abraham Hoffer treated over 6,000 people with schizophrenia and many more with depression. He was in charge of psychiatric research in Canada. A real genius. Mm. And he found something really interesting, which was a chemical that occurred in the urine of a lot of people with schizophrenia, some people with depression, but really was incredibly rare in normal people. It's something called a pyrrole. And at our brain biocenter, we take a urine sample and we test for this. And if it's present, it means that that person is actually excreting more vitamin B6 and zinc. It may be partly genetic. And people who have this, it's called pyroluria. They're very prone to depression. They're very affected by stress. So we always look at people whose depression, starts with a major stress, like exams or a split up in a relationship. They become quite socially withdrawn. Sometimes it goes along with bad skin. You might have heard that zinc is terribly important for the skin. So here's another factor, a lack of B6 and zinc in some people, can also lead to depression.
Oh.
And then another factor that's worth considering, and each of these are in my book, is the effect of stress. A lot of us, we are suboptimally nourished. We don't get taught in school how to eat properly. We get tired, and because we're tired, we start to consume more sugar, because sugar gives us energy. And we then have more caffeine. And before long, we're living on coffee with sugar and cereals with sugar and maybe smoking nicotine, which at the end is a stimulant. It's sugar, 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 caffeine, caffeine, caffeine. And after a while, you can't relax, so you drink in the evening. So now you need alcohol to relax, which makes you not sleep so well. You may appear to sleep, but you don't get the normal dream cycle, which is terribly important. Because when we dream, we're actually processing the events of the day. Mm. So now you wake up more tired, you need more sugar, more caffeine, more alcohol, uppers and downers. And, and before long you're prescribed an antidepressant to make you feel better and maybe a sleeping pill to help you to sleep. And it's really a mess. Mm. So we also look very closely at stress and anxiety and insomnia, because if you don't get enough sleep, you just don't have the energy to deal with things. And life is so fast that this can really be a factor that puts people out of balance. By the way, we find sleep is really important, and one of the reasons why people can't get to sleep is, again, a lack of serotonin. Serotonin is made from the amino acid tryptophan. There's actually a form of tryptophan which is called 5-HTP, and you can buy it as a supplement. You normally take 100 to 200 milligrams. It's actually extracted from a bean found in Africa called the Africa griffonia bean.
Oh, right.
And if you were to say, well, where's the evidence? The answer is we have 27 placebo-controlled trials which show that 5-HTP is very, very effective. And it's not addictive. It's a naturally occurring nutrient. Very interesting indeed. And if you lack serotonin, From serotonin, the brain makes melatonin, and melatonin is the neurotransmitter that goes up at night and helps you to sleep. So if you were to say to me, I want a sleeping pill, what's the best one? I would say melatonin. Your doctor can prescribe it, it's natural. But actually, if you have enough 5-HTP, you make melatonin. And if you have enough melatonin, then you can sleep. The other reason why people can't sleep is they have too much adrenal hormones, too much stress. They can't switch off. And that's where things like CBT is really effective. But here's a lateral thought. One of the things I often recommend, this is a CD. It's called Silence of the Beast. And it's actually music that switches off the stress reaction in people's brain. And it's 45 minutes long, and I've never heard the end of it, because you put it on quietly in the background as you prepare to go to sleep, and go off. So part of the reason, for my book, The Field Effect, is to actually look at what works. Where is the science? And to give you an example there, of depression, you might have heard of clinical depression. And really, a lot of us feel low. We did a survey on over 100,000 people, and about 4 out of 10 people say that they often feel low or depressed. Now, that isn't so-called clinical depression. To be diagnosed with depression, you go to a doctor or a psychiatrist, and they diagnose you. But how do they diagnose you? And the answer is on a questionnaire. And the most commonly used one is called the Hamilton Rating Scale of Depression. Mm. And it's not rocket science. I mean, in my book, I have a version of this questionnaire, and it will ask you, symptoms that are not, that most of us would sometimes answer yes to, like, do you feel downhearted, depressed, or sad? Do you feel worse than morning? Do you have trouble falling asleep? Is your appetite poor? Are you gaining weight? Do you feel unattractive and unlovable? So, I mean, there's a whole lot of questions, and basically, if you score above a certain number, then you are officially diagnosed as depressed. And you can be diagnosed as mildly depressed, moderately depressed, or severely depressed. Now, here's the thing. If you look at studies on antidepressants, and there was a very good review of this recently in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the placebos, if you give people placebos, it will normally halve the Hamilton rating scale. So a 50% improvement, but that's a placebo effect. If you give them antidepressant drugs, overall, you normally get a 65% improvement. So that's a 15% better. But that is much, much less than you get on 5-HTP. It's much, much less than you get on omega-3. So in my book, what I've tried to do is to show how comparatively effective nutrients are. And by the way, some people get great benefit from antidepressants, but there's an awful lot that don't. And recently there have been 7 studies which did something rather sneaky. When you're in a trial, a medical trial, they can't tell you whether you're on the placebo or the antidepressant. But they have to tell you that there are side effects. You might get disturbed sleep or anxiety or sweating or, all sorts of problems. And of course, most people, when they're on these drugs, they get side effects. And as soon as they notice something, they think they're on the drug. And as soon as they notice or think they're on the drug, they are more likely to answer the questionnaire at the end of the 12 weeks with, yeah, I think my mood is better. Yes, I think I am sleeping better. It's called the enhanced placebo effect. So there are 7 studies now which have given a placebo that has similar side effects to the drug. Oh. So now, you think you're on the drug because you're getting side effects, but actually you're on the placebo. And in these studies, they found no difference at all between the placebo and the drug. Now, quoting the Journal of the American Medical Association, which looks at 6 good studies on antidepressants, they say the evidence of a benefit versus placebo is marginal or non-existent in mild or moderate depression. So, and this is in Britain, we have the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. They say the same thing. So if you're severely depressed, antidepressants really may help you. But if it's mild or moderate, to be honest, you're much better seeing a good psychotherapist, having some CBT, exploring what's stressing you out, getting your diet good, eating what we call a low glycemic load diet or a diet with less sugar, having enough protein from meat and particularly from fish and nuts and seeds, which will give you more 5-HTP, exercising, which boosts your mood, outdoors, which gives you vitamin D. You know, these factors are going to make a big difference. And if you were to ask me, you know, in a nutshell, you know, what could someone do right now for mood? And this is rather a shotgun approach, because at the brainbiocenter.com, what we do is we find out exactly what's going on. But if you ask me that question, I would say eat a diet that keeps your blood sugar, number one. Number two, have at least 3 servings of oily fish a week. That's for the omega-3s. Number 3, exercise outdoors. Double effect, vitamin D and exercise.
Okay.
Number 4, I would say supplement omega-3 fish oils, because there's plenty of evidence that they work. And number 5, I would say take a supplement. I mean, we have one here in the UK. It's also in South Africa. It's called Mood Food. And
okay.
And it contains vitamin D, chromium, 5-HTP, certain B vitamins like the B6 and zinc. It basically contains all of the factors that we know support mood. And, you know, that is a really good place to start. You know, allergies sometimes are involved. You know, it's a question. In the book, you can actually go through questionnaires, and it really guides you. So
I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Mallory is asking, how long does it take to come off sleeping meds or antidepressants?
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, I talk about sleeping pills. The hardest, I mean, literally one of the hardest drugs to get off, even harder than heroin, are what are called the benzodiazepines, Valium, Librium, etc. This was the first generation of sleeping pills. And the reason why these drugs are terribly hard to get off is that there is a substance in your brain called GABA, which switches off adrenaline. And these drugs, they mimic GABA, and then you stop making less of your own. So they're switching off adrenaline. So in other words, if you take a Valium, you just feel instantly, you know, like fuzzy, you know, stress. There is no stress. Now the problem is, if you suddenly stop the drug, you have no ability to turn off stress. So you'll go into an extreme state of anxiety. It's very, very dangerous. And that is why on a benzodiazepine, you have to come off very, very slowly indeed, and always with medical, you know, supervision. Now, the next class of sleeping pills are called the non-benzodiazepine. Sometimes they're called the Zs, like Ambien, Zimmervain, etc. And Keith Ledger, you know, the actor, when he sort of overdosed, he was on these drugs.
Okay.
And apparently they're not addictive, but you know, I don't think that's really the case. People get very hooked on them too. So the answer again is slowly. Now, the problem with antidepressants is that the last generation, which we call serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Prozac is an example, Prozac, Lustril, Zerexat, paroxetine, you know, there are different names in different countries, Zoloft. Now, when you're on these drugs, they actually block the ability to recycle serotonin. So the longer you're on them, effectively, the more depleted you are in serotonin. And if you suddenly stop, you have no serotonin, you can really feel lousy. And a lot of people end up hooked on these drugs. They cannot get off them because the side effects are so horrendous when they try to. So the answer there is that while you are on medication, you want to do everything you can to get the brain chemistry right. And my book, The Feel Good Factor, is very clear about this. There is one caution, we do not recommend people to both supplement 5-HTP, which helps to make serotonin, while taking an antidepressant that blocks its breakdown. Theoretically, you can end up with too much serotonin, which is not a good thing. So don't have 5-HTP on an antidepressant, but read the book, do everything, omega-3s, vitamin D, exercise, low GL diet, everything else, and then talk with your doctor about slowly coming off, maybe over a 6-week period where you have 3/4 of the dose, then half the dose, and so on. I do honestly believe that we have to find the root causes of problems. And sometimes they're psychological, sometimes they're spiritual, in the sense of meaning of life stuff. Sometimes they're just negative behavior patterns and negative thought patterns we get stuck in. Sometimes they're nutritional, they're to do with our brain chemistry. But people don't get depressed because of a deficiency of drugs. So if a drug works for you, great. But the intention should be to find a way to live where you're not dependent, on the drugs, and go very slowly. I have written in the book, The Feel Good Factor, about how to come off medication. At our Brain Biocenter, we have a psychiatrist who works with the person's doctor, and we do it slowly. Most people do end up, but sometimes after 6 months or a year, off all medication.
Okay.
I see the questions pouring in here. Do you want me to answer some of them?
To make an apology to everybody, we've been trying to get Patrick's video showing on the main screen. For some reason, it wasn't working. So whilst he was talking, I don't know you all seen him on the little screen over there. So apologies. But for now, he's willing to just spend some time answering your questions. So if you have any questions to ask Patrick on nutrients and depression, he's talked about 5-HTP, was that?
5-HTP.
5-HTP.
Hydroxytryptophan, 5-HTP.
And he's talked about how you can actually make more serotonin naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So can you just fire your questions now at him, please?
Good. I think the mixture of psychotherapy, CBT, and nutrition it's really a marriage made in heaven. It's so great. When a person's, if someone's living off 15 cups of coffee a day, it's very hard to make a lot of sense, out of life. So it's terribly important to support brain function first and get that right.
And I do agree with that. And this is part of what I was going to present in my own presentation. It is sad that over the years, it seems like the different professions seemed to be very separate in what they were doing. Mm-hmm. So you have psychology on one side, you have psychiatry on one side, biology on one side.
Yeah. Whereas
now, the combination of all of them is bringing more knowledge to all of us, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Here's the absolute paradox. Number one, we're talking about depression. How is depression diagnosed? The answer is based on psychological symptoms, whether it be in a questionnaire or simply a doctor or psychiatrist's judgment. So we diagnose it on psychological symptoms. What is the conventional treatment? And the answer is a chemical drug.
Yeah.
There's actually no chemical test, but the treatment is a chemical drug. And then if you were to say to the average psychiatrist, did you know that nutrition, i.e. chemistry, has a big effect on how you think or feel? They would say, no, I don't think that's the case. So it's kind of crazy. So at the Brain Biocenter, we measure your serotonin, we measure your omega-3, we measure your vitamin D, we measure your blood sugar. And anything that we find is out of balance, we correct it. And in most cases, people's depression hits. I think that I love that saying, I'm sure you know it, that depression is just anger without enthusiasm. Don't get sad, get mad. So I think a lot of us, we really sit on things in our life that isn't working. A lot of grief, for example, is anger. But we are allowed to cry and we're allowed to, be sad. But in a lot of our society, we're not really so allowed to be angry. So what I find very often is that we numb ourselves with sugar, with caffeine, with alcohol, with cigarettes, and also with medication, because some of these medications, they're just, they numb. Cannabis numbs. We numb ourselves. We avoid pain at all costs. And in the process of which we have no energy. So we feel really, really tired. And when you start to nourish your body and your brain properly, you get more energy. It gives you more insight. And if you do have good friends, good counselors, good guidance, then you have the skills and the insight and the energy to actually make some changes in your life. So
it's about making a whole life change, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I loved the Dalai Lama. He once said that every human being has two fundamental desires, and one is to be happy, and the other is to be free of pain. And he said that his daily meditation in dealing with people was to remember that his desire to be happy and free of pain is of no greater or lesser importance than that of people that he would meet. And I thought that was really nice. That gives a good sort of perspective.
Okay, Diana has a question. Actually, the first one is a statement and a thank you. You are stating what has taken me 30 years to figure out, so I thank you for that. Do you think that depression is hereditary? And then another question, do you think that... Oh, the same question twice, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I think it can be. And I'll give you an example. There's so much that we could say. You can inherit certain tendencies. So, for example, some people are what we call high histamine. Histamine is a substance in the brain and body that for example, causes allergic reactions. So if you have hay fever, you have more histamine. And histamine actually speeds up the body's metabolism. And we find in a proportion of people who are depressed very high histamine levels. And a high histamine person has some interesting characteristics. Number one, because it speeds up the body's metabolism, high histamines generally don't gain weight easily. They're the ones who can eat, like a pig and never gain weight.
Oh man, I wish I was like that, man.
I'm sure. They have longer fingers and longer toes. I don't know if you have in your mind the statue of Abraham Lincoln in America sitting there with his hands on the chair with his very long fingers and long toes. They're compulsive and obsessive by nature. They have a very active mind. And these high histamine people, their metabolism is faster and they use up nutrients at a faster rate, including vitamin B6 and zinc. And vitamin C is an antihistamine, so they're very prone to kind of burnout, and then they go into a pit of depression. They often love alcohol because it calms their overactive mind. And this is what we call histodelia, an excess of histamine. So this is a genetic factor. And by the way, in high histamine families, there is a greater prevalence of schizophrenia, of depression, of suicide, and of alcoholism. So yes, I think you can genetically inherit a predisposition towards depression. And of course, you can also inherit it psychologically. So we learn our behavior patterns from our parents. And, they go very, very deep. So yes, I think you can inherit a tendency towards depression in a number of ways. Does it mean that you will, you have to be depressed? No, because if you can find out what's unique for you, then, for example, a high histamine type, and by the way, a lot of great achievers and artists and creative people are high histamine, so it has a benefit as well. They need more vitamin C, they need more B6, they need more zinc. Okay. So, it's, you may or may not know, but there's a much higher proportion of schizophrenia in the siblings of Nobel Prize winners.
Is that so?
Yeah, so there's this sort of line between genius and madness. The people who can think outside the box, often do very well. But if you're really outside the box, then you do very badly. So I don't believe that. I think we're all individual. We have an individual biochemistry. There is no one thing that works for everyone. And the journey in life, is to find out, really what works for you.
Okay. So we thank you so much for all the information you've given us today, Patrick. And I know you have a very busy day, a very busy schedule, so I won't take much of your time anymore. But as I have to say to everybody watching, Patrick has written 37 books on nutrition and health. And also, I think you've written on some books on weight loss also, haven't you?
Very much, the low PL diet. And by the way, for everyone listening around the world, my books you can get at patrickholford.com. And if you press the books button, there's a list for foreign titles because the books are translated into 25 different languages. So you can find out which ones are available in your country. And the charity that I work for is called foodforthebrain.org. There's a lot of fantastic information there. So do have a look at that. And, also on my website, there are ways to post questions, find out more, educate yourself, enrich yourself, empower yourself. You are the creator of your own health. Learn great skills from my wonderful host here. And, just take charge of your life.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patrick. I know Patrick has to leave us now. So we'll go to part 2 of the seminar. So Patrick, whenever you want, you're free to leave. All you just have to do is just switch your screen off.
Thank you very much.
It's nice having you with us.
You too. All the best.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Okay, people. So we've heard what Patrick has had to say. And I think it's quite interesting because although myself and Patrick, we did not plan this presentation together, he's actually mentioned some things which are similar to what I will be telling you today. But I was going to be looking at how can we make sure our experience of depression doesn't keep coming back, doesn't keep reoccurring. So I'm just going to start my presentation. So you will notice I disappear on the screen. So just give me a few seconds. I'm not gone.